Hello and welcome to this laid back edition of Best Available Podcast. I say that because it is 8:40 p.m. on a Monday night. This is Best Available Podcast after dark. So we'll see if we get into any raunchy antics. Ryan here with Matt, and we have some stuff to talk about. We've kind of reached that point, especially in a year like this where we're still affected by the pandemic. There's not really too much going on in terms of sports, but we have a nice list of stuff here that we're gonna kind of talk about here over the next hour. So, little quick episode. We'll get you in, we'll get you out, and you'll be ready to get on with your day, Matt. February is now almost over. We're halfway through the second month of the year. This year just seems to be flying by. How have things been on your end since the last time we recorded?
Well, Ryan, one thing about February that's so great is that it goes by so fast. We're getting to almost one of my favorite months of the year, being March, obviously, with the NCAA tournament.
Oh.
So you will see a much different mood out of me in about 2 weeks. But yeah, things are all right. The snow's starting to melt. Apparently, we're getting another 3 to 5 on Thursday. So we're going to get more snow then, which will be just fantastic. It's supposed to go up to 50 degrees tomorrow, Ryan. I'm very happy about that. Shorts weather for me. But, just hanging in there. You got your Dunder Mifflin hat on. Tribute to The Office. I was watching that right before we went on the show. Not too much going on, Ryan, as you mentioned. Laid back episode for us.
It's The Office Monday on Comedy Central. I got this hat as a gift, and I put it on this morning when I got out of bed, and I looked in the mirror and I said, wow, I look like Wayne from Wayne's World. And for those of you that don't know what Wayne's World was, that was a Super Bowl commercial. You might have recognized it with him and Garth. You can't really tell now because my headphones are kind of pushing my hair further back, but without the headphones, the resemblance, in my opinion, is uncanny. It wasn't the look I was going for when I started growing out my hair, but I accept it, and we'll see where it goes from here. We'll do our weekly book club check-in, Matt. So have you made any progress with
No.
your books? No, we're
No.
kind of at that point. I brought it up because I finally finished Open by Andre Agassi, and by the way, if you're a sports fan, if you're not a sports fan, regardless of tennis or not, I definitely recommend this book. It is one of my favorite, not just autobiographies, one of my favorite books I've ever read. It made me wish I was alive when Agassi played, because I never watched him. I never got to watch him. His last real match was '06. I kind of grew up in Matt's the same way. We grew up with the Federers, Nadals, Roddick, James Blake, those kinds of guys. I guess to an extent Djokovic, Andy Murray. But Agassi, it would have been a lot of fun to follow along in his career when it actually happened. The book, he went through all the highs, all the lows, whether it was on the court, off the court. It was a great look inside this man's career. So I definitely recommend it. As I said, it's one of my favorite books I've ever read, and I don't say that lightly. So I don't know what I'm going to read next, but I have a lot of options, so I'm sure you'll hear about it. Matt, let me ask you this. Do you know, because the more I read about it, the more I realized I've really never heard of this guy until I read the book. Do you know anything about Andre Agassi other than the fact that he played tennis and he was an American?
Not really. I mean, I could picture a couple highlights from time to time, but I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, our favorite tennis athletes are more along the lines of like Federer, Serena.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't tell you. I'm not the biggest tennis guy. I always say I watch one tournament a year. It's the U.S. Open, just because, it's not at 3 in the morning like the Australian Open. But yeah, I genuinely don't know much about the guy.
I mean, I'll watch the Grand Slams. I'll watch the some tournaments here and there if there's a match that's appealing. But I mean, it's weird. This guy completed the career Grand Slam with the four, with the French Open, Australian Open, U.S. Open, Wimbledon. I don't know. I feel like maybe I just was stupid and I wasn't paying attention, but I feel like I would have probably heard of this guy at least a little bit at some point when I've been watching tennis recently, and it his name really never came up. But then once I finished reading the book, I started looking up highlights of his on YouTube. The guy was an incredible player, really, an athlete. He hated tennis, which I thought was interesting. Like he literally hated the sport. He was basically forced into playing the sport by his dad. He never really had a choice on whether he wanted to actually play or not. He wanted to play like soccer or a team sport. But regardless, he ended up being one of the best, not just American tennis players, but one of the best tennis players of all time. I think he's in the Tennis Hall of Fame, I think I saw. So, Open, Andre Agassi, check that book out. Great book. So, moving on from nerd stuff into sports, because this is a sports podcast. It was announced that J.J. Watt would be released by the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans organization in and of itself, that's an entire podcast episode, so we're just going to focus on the J.J. Watt part of it. Matt, you had texted the group chat immediately after. You said J.J. Watt will be a blank next season, and I said Packer, you said Patriot. He's going to have his fair share of suitors, but just let's break this down here. If you're a team that's contending for a ring, would you be interested in J.J. Watt?
I mean, 100%. I think, you gotta check yourself if you're not interested. I mean, the guy is, just speaks and embodies what you want to bolster your championship roster. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm going to get the number wrong, but over the last 4 or 5 seasons, he's missed like 30-some games. So durability is a factor. So when you ask that question, yes, you should immediately be interested when you see a guy of his caliber hit the open market. That's what I'm trying to get at. But you also have to take into account when you kind of pay the guy, hey, durability is going to kind of be a factor. Maybe we won't use him as much. Maybe he turns into one of those like savvy vets that doesn't play, 3 downs and all that stuff in every single play. But I think if you're a contender, Ryan, and you're trying to knock off the Buccaneers next season, or if you're Tampa Bay and you lose a couple people to free agency, maybe take a waiver on a guy who hasn't been fully healthy. And he, for the first 4 or 5 seasons of his career, Ryan, he didn't miss a game, right? So this has all happened in the past couple of years, but, to answer your question, you have to be interested in a guy like this, regardless of that.
Obviously, and you alluded to this, you're not getting the same guy he was early in his career. I mean, he is on the wrong side of 30. Now you bring up the durability issues. 2016, he played 3 games. 2017, he played 5 games. 2019, he played 8 games. He had a couple 16 games in there sandwiched in, but as you said, he's not the durable guy he once was. Some of that's not his fault, but I think if you're a contending team, because he's not going to go to a team that's not contending. I saw, as an Eagles fan, I saw Lane Johnson recruiting him. That would have been cool, but he's not going to go to Philadelphia or any team like that. I think you brought up a good point. If you just find the right situations to use him, he's not going to be an every down guy, but if you put him in there maybe 40 to 50% of the time, mainly on passing downs, because he's one of the best edge rushers of our generation. So if you just find him situations and scenarios where he can succeed and get back to maybe that level of performance, although be it to a smaller degree, that's a valuable addition to any team, absolutely. As I said, Green Bay is going to be interested. Matt, you brought up Tampa Bay. I know the Pittsburgh thing keeps getting tossed around because that's where TJ is, but let me ask you this. If you had to pick one team today, I know you said New England, but I'm going to give you a chance to change that if you want to. If you had to pick one team today that he's going to sign with, who is it?
Well, I said that mainly as just a hopeful fan. Sure. I think the Patriots should wisely use that money elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I like your prediction of Green Bay. I do. I think you see some of the Wisconsin athletes trying to recruit him to come back. I think Bobby Portis tweeted something or somebody else on the Bucks. So the stars should align for that. And I mean, listen, that is the best place to be, regardless. And we talked about how the Packers can't seem to make it to the big one, and will Rodgers ever make it back? Does Rodgers want out? I mean, if you want to prove to Aaron Rodgers, right, if you're Green Bay, if you want to prove to him that he's still the focal point of everything, and we're not transitioning to Jordan Love. Go out and get J.J. Watt. So I'm gonna vote Green Bay. I'm gonna side with you. Didn't Zach say like the Raiders or something?
Yes.
I don't agree with that. I don't think J.J. Watt would really get along with John Gruden. I will say this, Ryan. This is a very lesser comparison, but if you remember Chris Long, right, when he played in his latter years, not only with the Patriots but with the Eagles, not the same guy he was early on in his career. Didn't play every down, every snap, but he was very effective for both of our teams, right? And he won a couple Super Bowls off of that. So obviously, two completely different players, but this is kind of the same mold for somewhat of the same position, to where you get a guy, you reduce his role, and he can be effective. Chris Long was very effective for those years with both our teams towards the end of his career.
I think that's a good comparison, especially, maybe talent-wise now. I'm not saying throughout their career, but now they might be kind of similar just because of the injuries Watt has gone through. I mean, you look at Chris Long with the Patriots in 2016, 16 games. He only started 7. He only had 4 sacks. But they don't win a Super Bowl without him. And then the same thing the next season with the Eagles, 16 games. He only started 1, had 5 sacks. And, of course, they had the pressures in there as well. But once again, those two teams don't win the Super Bowl without Chris Long. I think it could be the same case as you were bringing up for J.J. Watt, too, whatever team he goes to. I want to bring up this part of it because I scratched my head when I saw the take. I'm not going to say who had the take, but it was when J.J. Watt was released, it brought up a lot of, it's so weird that Watt doesn't want to be in Houston. He just gets released, but Deshaun Watson doesn't want to be there, and he's kind of held captive. Matt, I don't know if I'm just getting old and grumpy, but did people not understand how contracts work? I mean, and the players themselves too. Like, Watt had a year left on his contract, and we've brought up the durability issues. He's not the same guy he used to be. Deshaun Watson just signed an extension, a quarterback star extension. Was it just me that got up in arms about that take? It couldn't be just me.
Well, I'll say this, and this is no disrespect to J.J. Watt at all, but what he is now, as we keep prefacing, what he is right now in his career, Ryan, is very easy to find compared to a franchise quarterback. And I say compared, it doesn't mean just in general, but it's much easier to try and find and try and plug and play options for a guy who hasn't been on the field as much, as opposed to Deshaun Watson, who had really one of his best seasons of his career. And I think a lot of people forget that too. So Houston, everyone says, well, they're just going to trade him, and no matter what. I mean, sure, he doesn't want to be there, but also it's going to be hard for Houston to want to get rid of him. If you go look at his stats, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. That was just so quietly done because Houston sucked, right? I mean, I don't think I realized that until he tore apart the Patriots in December. And I'm like, wow, this team isn't totally horrible because of him. So, yeah, I don't know where that take comes from. Quarterbacks are so hard to move in the NFL anyway.
I know.
I'm happy that they're letting J.J. Watt go chase a ring, right? Because Watson's still young. He just signed that extension, as you mentioned. J.J. Watt, we talked about the durability. He's on the wrong side of 30. How many more good years does he have left, right? And I mean this with all due respect, but it's the same thing, in terms of just going out there for a full 16 games and starting 16 games. How many more seasons does he have of that left in him? So I'm happy they let him go do that. I want to see a guy like him who has done so much for the community there too, right? I mean, he's just a, pretty solid dude. You're smiling. What? Did you see a take or something that...
I looked it up. I don't know. I guess I like to get upset. And I don't know why I just looked it up, but I don't like the sports media landscape anymore, man. What happened to it?
Is this something I'm going to find on my timeline? This is great radio. But anyway, like I think you and I are both happy that we're going to see J.J. Watt in the postseason next year,
Hopefully.
vying for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He gave everything he possibly could to that city. I don't think any fan has any right to complain, right?
No.
And if they are, then they're just, then you don't deserve to have him on your team at that point. So it's the same thing like for me when Tom Brady left. It's like I'm happy for him. Like go do whatever you got to do, man. Like you can't be mad at the guy. It's the same kind of thing. So I'll be following along. I think you're going to be right, Ryan. I think it'll be the Packers.
So you brought up how quarterbacks are hard to move, and as an Eagles fan, I know that better than anybody. This guy on the Eagles was supposed to be traded 2 weeks ago, and he's still here. And I need to bring this up. So this is what I was smiling about. Well, this and something else, but mainly this. One of the leading sports radio hosts in the, I guess, the country, Mike Missinelli, he quote tweeted a report that says the Chicago Bears have acquired QB Carson Wentz in a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. He says this has to be bogus, right? The handle is Ultra Weed Hater. You'd think if you're an outright leader in sports talk radio, you might think to check the handle. But then as someone wisely tells him in the replies, I don't know, Mike, Ultra Weed Hater is usually pretty reliable. So
Your fan base really wants to trade that guy to Chicago. They really are trying to force that to happen.
We need Nick Foles back. It just brings us so much comfort to know that he's with us. He'll be there on the sidelines, just wearing his hat, content to be there.
I'm telling you, there's going to be at least one of the two between Wentz and Deshaun Watson. They will be on their team that they're on now at the start of September.
Oh, don't say that.
The next season.
Please don't say that. Don't.
One of the two.
I don't need that.
You have a 50-50
need
shot,
that.
Brian.
No, I don't need that in my life.
I'll expand it. I'll expand your odds. I'll throw Jimmy Garoppolo's name in there too. And you know what? I'll give you a 1 in 4 chance. Sam Darnold. Half of those guys, Ryan, will be on their same team at the start of not only training camp, but the season. I think people don't understand how hard it is to make a trade in the NFL, especially with quarterbacks. So
I'm unfortunately finding that out the hard way.
But I don't like the take, Ryan, of making this a Deshaun Watson thing. This is about J.J. Watt trying to find. This is the overarching point we're getting at here. This is not a Deshaun Watson thing at all. So, boo to that take.
Well, hopefully we'll get some J.J. Watt news after we get some Carson Wentz news. We're going to move on. I don't like to say his name too loudly because then I'm suddenly accosted by the entire city of Philadelphia. We're going to move on. We have a lot of fun. So we're going to talk about sports that we don't talk about a lot, really. Just that's how the sports calendar kind of is in February. We're going to talk just a little bit about the Daytona 500. Now, Matt, I searched on Google's just so I could have them in front of me. Daytona 500 results. And then you know how Google also has like that people also ask thing, like a little down the page? Well, Matt, in searching for Daytona 500 results, people also apparently ask, do NASCAR drivers poop in their suits? And
that's a commonly asked question.
Apparently, I didn't know that.
What's the answer?
Well, according to Daytona500races.com, 10 awkward questions about NASCAR people ask on the internet. The answer is, in all caps, no. Before starting the race, drivers use the toilet and empty themselves. So if you ever wanted to know that, there's your answer. We're breaking news here. So anyway, now that we have that, now anything that I'm going to say about NASCAR, it's not going to live up to pooping in suits, but Matt, I watched the Daytona 500, unfortunately. So number one, for those that didn't watch it, it started a little after 3. There was a big wreck on lap 14, and then that was followed up by a nice almost 6-hour red flag. So that was a great way to start the season. And then after that, the race was just very boring. It was single file for like the entire thing up until the last lap. And then there was another very dangerous, fiery multi-car crash at the end. And somehow, some way, the little team that could won a Daytona 500. Michael McDowell in the 34 car, after years of starting and parking, grinding his way through bad teams, won his first race ever in his mid-30s, and that race just so happened to be the Daytona 500. So, Matt, I'll ask you this as a very, very casual NASCAR fan. Is it more appealing to you when the big names win, or is it more appealing to you when you hear about these stories about these small teams somehow finding their way into victory lane?
Well, I'm going to give you two answers. The first answer is the most appealing race to me, Ryan, is one that doesn't last like 8 hours. The second part of it is I guess I would be more interested in these smaller guys winning, right? And I said Michael McDonald to you off the air, famous artist, famous singer, but Michael McDowell. So there we go. If I say that, just whatever. The guy's in the playoffs now, right? Because he won a race. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. So I guess I would be more happy for the guy if this guy who was like just I mean this in the most endearing way possible, but like very lower tier racer is now in the one of how many spots? 16?
Yeah.
That gets to race for the cup? Like, it's the first race of the year. How can you already determine a playoff spot in race one and give it to a guy who won his first race in how many attempts, Ryan? 200 something? 300 something?
It was a lot. It was a very high number.
So, like, I guess it would be more appealing to me if they weren't just handing out playoff berths week one. So I guess there's your answer. And you had two guys at the top that were really big names, right? You had Joey Slogano and then you had Denny Hamlin. So, and Joey Logano, I just like saying Slogano, but like that, those are two really big names in NASCAR and two names that I'll sit there and watch. So I don't know. I guess it's a slap in the face to those guys too, right? I mean, they're some of the better drivers in NASCAR, and then some dude because who caused the crash, Ryan? Let me ask you that. Was it Michael McDonald? Was it this guy?
You're gonna get a different answer depending on who you talk to. The way I see it, it was a racing incident. Unfortunately, these incidents at super speedways are always very dangerous just because of the speeds you're going. McDowell gave Keselowski, so Logano was in front, then Keselowski was in second, McDowell was behind them. McDowell gave a push to Keselowski. Keselowski had the run. He tried to go low. Logano saw that. He tried to block. When you're at these speeds, if you don't block right away, like before it even happens, you're already going to be too late. Logano was too late. He caused a big crash in front of him, and then that's how that happened. So, was it McDowell's fault? No. Was it Logano's fault? No. You're not going to stop. You're not going to not block in the Daytona 500. Was it Keselowski's fault for trying to take this position? No. In my opinion, I have to make that clear. It's just what happens, I guess is the best way to put it.
Because it looked like, to the very, very casual fan eye that I have, it looked like he caused a crash. And then he kind of just pushed him out of the way and just went home and took the green flag or whatever it is, the green checkered whatever. So I guess for me, that's where it's frustrating. I guess it was Keselowski, not Hamlin. I'm assuming Denny Hamlin was somewhere in the top 10 anyway. But yeah, I guess I would be more intrigued in the underdog story if they weren't instantly rewarded with a playoff berth. And I guess that's kind of hypocritical of me because I love college basketball, and you could be the worst team in the country and win your conference tournament, and then you get to be on the country's biggest stage. So I guess it's a little hypocritical of me, but I don't know. We talked about this, I think, in November, December, whenever the final NASCAR race was last year, that this playoff format sucks, right? I must have at least said this. Like, to someone who is not as attached to the sport as you are, Ryan, it just looks so. It seems so stupid to me. I don't know if that's why you're upset about the race. You haven't really elaborated yet, but you seem very bummed out that you
It's
stayed
just
up to 12:15 in the morning to watch Michael McDowell win the Daytona 500.
you.
And for those people out there, this is like the Super Bowl, right? To NASCAR.
Yeah, this is their biggest race of the year, and they kind of pride themselves on that. So you brought up as a casual fan, you're not a fan of races that go 8 hours. Well, don't worry, the NASCAR fans aren't fans of that either. I don't know whose idea it was to make a racetrack at Daytona Beach where it rains every day, but okay, it just this all started because lap 14 there was a big crash that took out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars. A lot of them among the best in the field. I mean, super speedway doesn't really matter, but it still took out 10 cars. So that's already 25% of the field. And then you also had other people that didn't either make it the entire race or they were out there but they were really slow, so they were a lot of laps down. So the crash on lap 14 really ruined the race because for the rest of it after they got back from the rain, it was just single file for the entire thing for the most part, outside of a couple laps here and there. That's not exciting for a fan. That's it. It's that you would have hoped that maybe someone decided to maybe just take a chance and have people follow them, but between the manufacturer stuff that goes on at these super speedway tracks and just it was boring. And so this guy that writes for The Athletic that covers motorsports, Jeff Gluck, he always does was this a good race poll? Right now it's at 56.7% yes with over 21,000 votes. I'd love to see what it would have been if a guy who didn't win for the first time in his career won the race. Like if it was Denny Hamlin or Chase Elliott, I don't think this would be over 50%. It was a very bad way to start the season. But hopefully next week at the road course, the Daytona road course, they can kind of put on a good show. The Clash was fun, so maybe hopefully they can transition that to a full event now. And I don't know, Matt. I don't know. It was not a fun day to be a NASCAR fan.
Well, I mean, every race seems to have a 3-hour minimal rain delay. I mean, every race last year when this was one of the only things going on, Ryan, right? It was this and the PGA Tour right at the beginning, and then eventually, like some of the team sports started coming in. I was so not interested because there was a 2-hour rain delay, and then they'd come back, and then 3 laps later there'd be a crash. I'm telling you, Ryan, NASCAR domes. That's the future of the sport. I said it last year. Whoever the commissioner or whatever the title is for NASCAR, you got to look into domes, my friend. Domes. That is the future of motorsports. Because then you're never going to have a rain delay. Huh?
All right. Well, I'll be sure to pass that along to the higher ups at NASCAR. And yeah, it's weird. We're gonna get off of NASCAR, but they've had a lot of issues with weather over the past couple of years. Like I don't know if it's just recency bias, but I don't recall them ever having as many issues with rain as they've had the past couple of years.
Well, I mean, I think the one issue too is that they race in a lot of, I don't want to say tropical climates, but in a lot of warmer climates to where there's a lot of moisture in the air, right? I mean, Florida is one of their biggest money getters. You have a lot of races down there. I'm assuming there's a lot in like the Sun Belt area as well. Rains a lot there. So, and then even in the summer, right, when they come up to like Pocono or Dover, like a once in a week chance, we get pretty bad thunderstorms up here too. So, yeah, I don't know. For a casual fan, Ryan, it's very hard for me to get into a race where there's a stoppage all the time. Because when there's a crash or a caution, I don't even know what some of the cautions are. Sometimes there's nothing to caution. Like there's nothing to be cautious about on the track. I get confused. So they gotta do something, man. I get it's like a high speed thing, so you can't prevent that stuff. I understand it, but the rain doesn't help their cause. That's for sure.
Animation Domination was supposed to come back on Fox last night, and so not only was I left with a boring race, but on the Family Guy subreddit, I was also roasted because someone had commented. So for those that don't know, Animation Domination now got pushed back to next week because it rained, so they couldn't show the shows. So then I, along with many other NASCAR fans, got roasted in the Family Guy subreddit when one user writes in, "Heaven forbid a bunch of drunken, wife-beating rednecks not get to watch cars driving in circles for 2 hours." So that was my Sunday night. As a drunken, wife-beating redneck, I did not get to watch my cars drive in a circle for 2 hours. We're going to talk about something else now. We're going to get off of NASCAR. As I said, this is a very laid-back show. We're just riffing tonight. We're just having some fun. College hoops. We're going to do a more broad thing, but there was news that came out shortly before we started recording. Duke's Jalen Johnson decided to opt out of the rest of the 2021 season, and some people went really far out with their takes with this happening. John Rothstein, for example, he tweeted, this guy tweets a lot. I need to go down a little bit.
He basically said he quit.
Yes.
He quit on his team with 3 weeks left.
I had a major issue with that take, Matt. Is that wrong of me to have an issue with that take?
No, so I'm usually a very big John Rothstein fan, but I think sometimes he lets his love for the game kind of trump the fact that these are like 19-year-old kids, right? And I guess we could call them kids now because we're graduated from college, so we have the right to say that now. But yeah, I did not really like that. And Jalen's taken a lot of heat, right? So I want to preface this by saying, and I need to be careful with how we kind of approach this, because we don't know what's going on, right? Behind the scenes, there could be stuff we don't know, or he could just want to prepare for the draft. It could be as simple as that, or there could be a lot of other issues going on. We don't know. But all the criticism that's being garnered from this, the optics certainly don't look good initially, right? Because we don't know the story, but the initial optics of it, Duke 8-8, haven't really looked good this year, and I'm going to do some mental math here. Shout out Zach Cosenza. They lost 6 of their last 9 games. So optically, after losing 6 of his last 9, minutes have been reduced recently. Didn't play in the Notre Dame game that much down the stretch where the game wasn't really in hand for a majority of it, as opposed to the NC State game they had recently. So I don't think the criticism should be thrown at him. We don't know the story. But optically, I could understand why people will jump to these conclusions right away, but we're never going to really know the full story because it's college hoops and you don't really find that stuff out. It's a lot of internal stuff going on probably.
Yeah, I guess, I could see where you're coming from. I think more than anything in a year like this, people getting on these kids about opting out of a season, I think is a little weird.
I agree. I want to preface by saying I agree. Yeah, I'm saying I'm taking it from the perspective. I'm trying to show people that optically I could see why people will get upset, but at the same time, people like John Rothstein sit there and tweet about these kids. These guys are the ones that are traveling to all kinds of different states. We're in a lot of green states right now in terms of COVID cases slightly getting better, but it's still out there, right? They're still risking their lives essentially to play a game and not get paid for it. So to sit there and criticize this guy who played, he was with the team for 2/3 of the year, and then there's other people questioning, we had and I'm using air quotes for anyone not watching right now. We do the show on YouTube. Go check it out. Ryan made some sick graphics for it. But air quotes, foot injury. People criticized him for missing games for that. Give the kid a break. And there's so much pressure on these high lottery picks in college hoops. And you got to feel bad for the guy too, because not only that, he's got the pressure of the fact that Duke stinks this year. So he didn't quit on his team. So it's frustrating to say that you can't quit on your team, especially as you said, during COVID.
So he he's opting out, in partially because he said he's just going to focus on preparing for the 2021 NBA draft. Now, Matt, I see on this one site that I'm on, and this was updated about, let me do some mental math here, 11 days ago, I think. I don't know. Regardless, it has him coincidentally going to the Celtics at 21. Is this guy not? Is this guy in your eyes a mid to late first round pick, or do you? And you're based on what you've seen, do you think he could go higher than that?
I think it's a really deep class. I mean, there's a lot of really good players.
That's what I've heard.
And there's a lot of guys too that are rising up draft boards too. I'm trying to find his season stats here. So he's played in 13 games, so that's 13 of the 16 that Duke played in. He averaged 21 minutes per game, which for a pick of that magnitude, you would want it to be a little more, but his minutes were kind of reduced recently. Averaged 11 and 6. I mean, listen, for a Coach K coached product, right? You know what you're going to get for most nights. And those guys are going to go in and be pretty steady. A lot of Duke players have seen a lot of recent success. Obviously, the top tier guys like Tatum, Zion, all those guys. There's more, but I'm forgetting them, whatever. It's hard to really pinpoint where he's going to land because he didn't finish the season. I don't really like when people say, "Oh, well, teams are going to be afraid of him because he quit on his teammates." He didn't quit. There's no, stop.
Well, even that too. Teams in the NBA, I don't think really care about that. They care about, can you perform well on the court and be a good team player? And well, I think he did prove that he could do that from what I saw.
There's some solid stats there, and I think you have to take into account too that Duke just did not have a good season. So you can't really fault the guy. And again, we don't know the stuff that went on at Duke behind the scenes with his foot injury. There's a lot of headlines about that. I saw Jeff Goodman, getting all up in a bunch about his foot injury. Rothstein saying he's like, these guys, Ryan, who are like older men who are sitting there criticizing a guy for just wanting to focus on the draft. And I think that's fine. Like, listen, if you want to do that and work on your game and like you have a trainer or you want to build up muscle that way, sure. And I think part of it too is if you're 8-8 and you're Duke, right? You have to win your conference tournament to get in to the NCAA tournament, which is college basketball's biggest stage. Where you're going to beat Virginia? You're going to beat Florida State? You're going to beat some of these teams? I don't even think they could beat the middle of the line teams in the ACC. I think Pittsburgh's better than them. So, I don't know. You can't criticize the guy. I was watching the ESPN halftime show. I guess Seth Greenberg said that his locker was cleaned out, so that means he quit on his teammates. But if he left his stuff in his locker, he didn't quit on his teammates. Like, stop. Like, he's a good player. I think it's a deep class. So it's no matter where you go in this draft, Ryan, I think it's not a disrespect to you or a disrespect to the player, right? I mean, there's just so many good players. So it'll be fun.
This is my first time looking at the Reddit post for this on the college basketball subreddit about him opting out. There are so many people that say we've already talked about how he's not quitting, but so many people agree with Rothstein, which I think it's just so weird. Okay, whatever. We're past that. Regardless, on Tankathon, I'll say that because I like Tankathon. They have him going at number 7. So clearly, as you said, there's a lot of different ways this can go, and of course, the draft is months away, so a lot of things are going to change between now and then. A couple other things I wanted to talk about with college hoops. So there was a report today from John Feinstein. He tweeted, "So I'm being told there will be an NIT this year, 16 teams all going to New York." And of course, he brought up a good point, talk about a throwback. NIT was held in New York through 1975 with 16 teams. Now, he added this at the end, and I wanted to get your take on it, because I worry that this is going to go the same way as college football bowl games. Only bad thing is they won't guarantee a spot to conference champions who don't win their conference tournaments. Now, as someone who went to Monmouth several years ago, and I'm talking about you, when they won their conference in the regular season, but they didn't win the tournament, they were guaranteed a spot in the NIT. I worry that this is going to turn to college football bowl games where we're going to get a lot of blue bloods like Michigan State and all these other teams who don't make the tournament at the expense of these mid majors that really deserve to be in the NIT.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. This reason this year, Ryan, is to protect the blue bloods. That's the only reason why this format is the way it is, right? I'm trying to look at Joey brackets right now. So obviously Duke's not in. Michigan State is like a bubble team right now. I don't even know if he has them in. But like Syracuse, it's to get those bigger names, because if you send Wagner to Madison Square Garden, who the hell's going to watch that, right? Wagner against, I don't know, San Diego. But as opposed to if you put in Michigan State and Duke and say, well, here you go, the NIT, people are going to be much more inclined to watch that, especially this year where ratings and viewership means a whole lot more because you can't sell a lot of tickets. You can't generate revenue like that. So you need to be able to get viewers. That's what it's going to be. And listen, as someone, excuse me, as you mentioned, who directly benefited from the NIT, I love its purpose. The best team's always going to win, regardless of if they're a high major or not. It's a good tournament. I hope we don't go in that direction. But well, you know what? I don't even say that, Ryan, because all the blue bloods, as you mentioned, they still get into the NCAA tournament with bad records. So you're just going to get more of it. You're going to get like Penn State, who has a losing record, who Lenardi still thinks is an NCAA tournament caliber team. They're going to get a high seed in the NIT. But there's the mid-major tournaments like the CBI, the CIT. I don't even know if the CIT is still a thing, but the CBI, those are the more mid-major tournaments. But yeah, it's a shame. No one wants to watch Duke. I'm sorry to burst anyone's bubble out there that's a Duke fan. Nobody wants to watch your team this year. Sorry. Like, try again next year.
No, I agree. I mean, I felt the same way with the college football games. These teams made it in with losing records just because they were premier programs. I know I didn't feel like watching them. I'm sure a lot of other people didn't feel like watching them either. And unfortunately, it seems like we're headed that way with the NIT. I'm sure they will get ratings. Otherwise, I mean, they know what they're doing. They will get ratings, but I don't think it's right. Matt doesn't think it's right. A lot of people don't think it's right, I would imagine.
Well, Ryan, here's to your point. You said 16 teams were going, right? So if I use Lenardi's most recent bracketology from Saturday, the first 8 teams outside of the bubble, 0 conference champions. So UConn, St. Louis, Richmond, Western Kentucky, Penn State, Maryland, Syracuse, St. John's. If you're going to count the A10, that's only 3 mid-major programs. If you don't count the A10, that's 1 mid-major program. So I don't know. That right there kind of defeats the purpose of it altogether. I think college football is different though, Ryan, because 2-10 South Carolina got an invite or something, right? They had a really bad record to a bowl game. I think bowl games suck. I think the NIT is much different. It's a prestigious tournament. It used to be the tournament at one point. A little history nugget there, but it's much more prestigious than I think, like the Zaxby's Idaho Potato Bowl, like it just has a different kind of draw. So I think bowl games are just completely lost, especially for our generation. I think people older than us appreciate bowl season more, and I don't know why. I think people our generation appreciate college basketball because we are the generation of sports bettors. So they are much more interested in the constant all-day college hoops. So I think that comparison, I don't know if that really sticks, but I see what you're getting at, though, and I don't like the trend. But I think they'll revert back to the original format next year.
Yeah, I hope so. So we are We're less than 1 month away now from Selection Sunday, which is weird to say with everything that has gone on, but for the most part, college basketball has been able to get through this season, and now we will see how it goes. The first four is supposed to start. It's scheduled to start on Thursday, March 18th. So we're getting there very quickly. We're almost there. So to close out this hoop segment, Matt, as I like to do, I just like to have you talk about anything that you feel is worth discussing, worth people knowing about as we close this regular season out pretty soon.
Well, Ryan, did you watch the mid-major game of the year over the weekend? Games over the weekend, Loyola, Chicago, and Drake. That was billed as the mid-major ticket for the whole year. Those were top two mid-major programs in the country. They split, which is probably making Joe Lenardi's head spin because he wants to take one of them out so bad because he wants to put Penn State or Maryland in. But he can't do that yet because they split. Drake did lose one of their best players, Tank Hemphill, to some foot injury, something broke or something. He's out for like a month or some timetable, which is big news. Loyola Chicago's ranked. They're probably going to win the Missouri Valley regular season. But that's significant news for Drake trying to hold on to a spot on the bubble. I think they're deserving no matter what, unless they just lose every game down the stretch. Other news, Ryan, you got 3 teams from the Big Ten in the top 5. Been hammering my fist about the Big Ten all year, ever since October. And now 3 teams are in the top 5, and I think all 3 have a chance to win a national championship. Baylor obviously missing a couple games to interruption protocols, which I haven't taken the time to read what that means. But in any case, we've missed out on some pretty big Baylor games to really be a good eye test to be if they're on the same level as Gonzaga. But regardless, that was the big mid-major news, and then also at the high major level, the Big Ten really kind of asserting itself. Michigan came off a long layoff, Ryan, and looked really good yesterday as well. So, overall, pretty solid week in college hoops. And I want to end it by saying, don't criticize Jalen Johnson. Just stop. If you're thinking about it, saying that he quit, like Rothstein said, you're wrong. So he's like 19. Have you ever made a decision that important at 19? Right? If you think about the money that's involved in that decision for him, right? To go and prepare for the next level. So just give the guy a break.
Well, Matt, I have made a decision that important when I was 19. I had to decide whether I wanted to get Papa John's with a discount code or whether I wanted to get Domino's but pay full price. And that was a money issue for me. So I did
It's a bad phrasing for me. I don't know if I
get what you're saying. I just wanted to make a little funny there, but I did go with the Papa John's for anybody wondering. But hopefully next year, Matt, we can do best available player at the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 because there will be games in Philadelphia next year for that. The first and second round, there will be games in Pittsburgh and then, of course, a bunch of other cities. As long as we're all safe by this time next year, we'll have college basketball in Philadelphia, which will be fun. So that's something to look forward to.
Well, if you want to see the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in Philadelphia, go out, get your vaccine. I'm going to put on my COVID hat for a minute here. Go out, get your vaccine. The numbers are starting to look encouraging, but that doesn't mean you lay down and relax. Stay vigilant. I want to go to the Sweet 16 next year, so don't ruin this for me. So there you go. That's my COVID minute.
Getting too political. Easy. I don't want to lose people here.
I want to go watch the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 for the first time. I want to go to my first NCAA tournament games. So don't ruin this for me, everybody. Thank you.
So we've talked about tennis. We've talked about motorsports. We've talked about college basketball. And we've talked about the NFL. It only makes sense from this point on to talk about golf. And there was the Pebble Beach this weekend, and Now the guy getting a lot of run in the media is not the winner, which you would think it would be, but instead Jordan Spieth is the subject of all this media attention. People are wondering, is he back? By the way, Daniel Berger was the guy that won. I guess I should give him his credit because he played an incredible 4 days at the Pebble Beach golf links. And Jordan Spieth, some are saying he choked. Regardless, he finished tied for third. He shot 15 under. Now, Jordan Spieth, early in our college days, was getting hailed as the next great golfer. He was never going to lose again. He was going to challenge Tiger Woods for majors, this and that. As we all know, golf is not like that. What Tiger Woods did was an outlier. We have these people go on major runs and then they just kind of fall off and go back to, somewhere else. I mean, we saw it happen with Rory, and then we saw it happen with Spieth. It happens to everybody. But Matt, the question everyone is asking now, is he back? I think we have to wait on that personally.
I think he's had a good couple weeks. And I mentioned last week, I'm starting to get into golf full time now, which has been really fun. Very relaxing, by the way. And I want to get ahead on this because Zach's going to text us in 2 days saying, oh, golf's not a sport, it's a hobby. Listen, it's one of the most relaxing things you could do on the weekend, personally, especially at Pebble Beach, right? You got the waves crashing in. You could hear, you could almost feel the ocean air there. You could feel it. You could feel spring starting. You don't really feel spring until the Masters, but you could feel it starting. I think we talked about this on the radio a couple times with Jordan Spieth, because that was, as you mentioned early on, so even probably before our radio days together with his success, we all did rush to conclusions. I think a lot of people forget what Tiger did, Ryan, is something that maybe a number of guys on like one hand that you can count have done in golf because it's such a volatile sport. And I even think you could throw tennis into there too, Ryan, and maybe even NASCAR. I mean, it's very hard to have success because there's so many variables in these sports and so many players. I mean, outside of NASCAR, I think it's a little bit of a less window in terms of people who participate every week. But think about all the tennis players, all the golfers out there, and you're competing against so many people on a week-to-week basis and so many factors like weather or an injury or something or just not your day. You got something in your mind like that you can't sink a putt. Like, a lot of people forget that golf's so volatile. Is Jordan Spieth back? I don't know. He could go out there and suck next week and we'll be right back on the other side of the train. But, I'm happy for him, right? I mean, this is a guy that was so heralded early on in his career, and you kind of have been hoping for him to kind of turn things around. So we'll see. You bring up a good point about Rory, among others, but he didn't choke. No. Let's be real here. He didn't choke. Daniel Berger played really well.
So Spieth, he missed the cut at the Farmers Insurance Open. I mean, even going back to late last year, he shot 14 over at the U.S. Open, and he missed the cut there. That was mainly just a really bad second round, but now he's put up he was tied for fourth last week at the Waste Management, and we talked about tied for third this week at the Pebble Beach. Well, all we can do is wait and see. Golf is better when the good guys are at their best, so hopefully he can put together a solid season. I will say, we didn't talk about this on the podcast when it happened, but one of my favorite moments every year is watching playoff games on CBS, NFL playoff games, and just hearing the Masters music and seeing the Masters promos. And it was nice because this is going to happen in April this year when it's supposed to happen and not in November. So that was fun. We're 2 months away. We're 2 months away from hearing Jim Nantz say hello, friends, on a nice, hopefully beautiful Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m., beautiful Augusta National. I'm looking forward. I'm already.
All right, I'm going to set the stage for you here. Not only in that NFL playoff game, right, do you hear the electric PGA Tour Masters theme, but you also hear the electric NCAA March Madness theme. we're approaching a
Yeah.
pretty solid stretch, right? So we're in this kind of little bit of post Super Bowl blues right now. We're waiting for college hoops to kind of kick up a little bit. Um, but we're going to start going one after another. We're going to have March Madness. We're going to have the Masters. NBA and NHL playoffs are going to be a little bit later this year because of COVID, but we're going to have baseball mixed in there. We're approaching some electricity. But you're right. I mean, the Hello Friends, even a couple weeks ago when CBS did their first PGA Tour event of the year, hearing him say "Hello Friends" is much better coming from a golf course than I think an NFL game. I don't know if you agree. Like Jim Nantz golf to me is better than Jim Nantz football. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I'm going to stand by that take.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Yeah. And that he's very good at football, but it's just he has a great demeanor. He has a great voice for afternoon golf. People kind of joke that it's a great thing to throw on the TV and take a nice 1 hour nap and then wake up refreshed. But that's a good skill to have. I appreciate being able to turn on my television on Saturday in the middle of May and fall asleep and wake up and Jim Nantz is still on the screen. So we're getting to that point. I mean, we already are at that point. He's already called some events, but Masters 2 months away, and as you said, March Madness 1 month away. Knock on wood, hopefully. So
Don't do that to me again, Ryan. I already missed one. I can't do another. That was brutal last year.
so it's your favorite time of the show. Um, America's Big Four sports trivia. Oh yeah. Um, so you've done good each week. So we're gonna actually start off with a basketball question, college basketball question. I did not get this one correct personally. In basketball, which city has hosted the most Final Fours as of 2019?
So I actually don't do college basketball history as well. If you ask me Metro Atlantic basketball history, I could do really well with that. But overall, my guess. Well, you know what? Is it bad for me to ask your guess first? Because I think we might have similar ones. My guess is Indianapolis.
That was my guess as well, just because of how long it's been a thing. But it was not. I'll give you a freebie.
Can
It
I
was not Indianapolis.
can I have a second guess?
Go for it.
I'll take the L on this one, but my second guess would be New Orleans.
The answer is Kansas City, Missouri. If you can believe that, they have hosted the most Final Fours as of 2019, which I would not have guessed.
Where? Where are they going to play those games? I mean, the Sprint Center, I guess, is what they have out there. Sure. I would not have gotten that. Indianapolis, Ryan, is a really good guess because the state of Indiana is like a basketball like center, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why they're playing the tournament there this year because there's so many venues to play it in. You look at guys like Gordon Hayward, right? Just the first guy that comes to mind, basketball, Indiana guy from Butler. That's a good guess by us.
So it says here on the all-knowing website wikipedia.org that it is indeed Kansas City, and in fact, it says it is the Municipal Auditorium in Kansas City, Missouri has hosted 9 Final Fours, the most as of 2019.
Okay, how many of those took place in like 1950?
Let me scroll down to Missouri here. I gotta scroll up. This is great. I gotta reach Final Fours is the last column. Okay, here we go. Now we're ready. All right, Matt. So 1940, 41,
Yep.
42, 54, 55, 56, 57. So they did a good 4-year run there. 61 and 64.
Yeah.
And
See,
that
the
is
rotation now is like Arizona, Minneapolis, basically anywhere that has an indoor football stadium is where they're going. So Atlanta, New Orleans, Minneapolis. Hey, Zach, you never know. Maybe Vegas will throw their name in the ring eventually. So anywhere the indoor football stadium is where the Final Four is going. San Antonio, if you count the Alamo Dome, Kansas
Yeah,
City, Ryan.
for those interested, the next 5 years for the Final Four, it'll be at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, NRG Stadium, State Farm Stadium in Phoenix, as you just said, the Alamo Dome, and then Lucas Oil Stadium. So that's the next 5 years. And yeah, we don't see Municipal Auditorium on there anywhere. Maybe in 2030 they'll get back in there. How many basketballs does each team get for a pregame warm-up in the NBA?
I worked there and I have no idea. I never knew this was a trivia question. Wait, let me guess. I'm going to say 8. That's my guess. Or 10. 8 or...
I'm going to split the difference for you.
It's 1
9.
to 2.
No, it's 9. So you were close. You're
right.
1 off each side.
Sure.
How many players may one ice hockey team have on the ice at any given time?
How many? So each team, or is it combined on the ice?
How many can one team have on the ice at any given time?
6, if you count the goalie.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Which ice hockey player is known as the Great One?
Wayne Gretzky.
Okay. In basketball, how many feet from the ground should the rim sit?
10 feet.
The first ever $1 million ice hockey contract was signed by Bobby Orr of the Boston Bruins during what year?
I don't know. I should know this because there's a Bruins banner right behind me. 1968.
1971, so you're only a few off, which is good. In Major League Baseball, the bases are 90 feet apart. How far apart are the bases in the Little League World Series?
I have no idea. I played Little League and I sucked. I have no idea.
The
I don't
answer
know. 60 feet, 30 feet. Who? I don't know.
is 60 feet, so I'm going to give you that one. When a basketball commentator says a player had a nice dime, what are they referring to?
An assist.
Okay.
You've had some pretty good dimes in our college days, Ryan. You get in the driving lane, you kick it out to the corner. It's some pretty good dimes.
I don't know about all that. In ice hockey, how long is a major penalty?
5 minutes.
That's correct.
I should know because the Bruins get a lot of those every year.
Now, I hate to put you on the spot like this, but when was the WNBA formed?
I should know this too. They just did 20 years, right? Or 25. I forget.
Was it 20 or 25?
I want to say it's 20 years ago. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go 20 years ago. But that was, I guess, this past season. Oh, great. Mental math here. So,
I'm going to give you
2001.
2 guesses.
2001.
And what would your second guess be?
2002. Actually, no. I'm going to go with 2000. That's my final answer.
The answer is...
No, wait. I'm going to second guess myself. It was in the late 90s, maybe. I don't know. Sometime between 1997 and 2002.
I'll give it to you because you did say the year in your range. The answer is 1997.
All right, there we go. I always forget. So wait, that would mean... So we hit 25 seasons. Okay. There we go.
Which U.S. city is home to the Steelers?
Pittsburgh.
That's correct. How many seconds are allowed between plays in an NFL game?
40.
In basketball, when did a number 16 seed beat a number 1 seed for the first time in March Madness history?
That was 20... This is going to 2018. Yeah, it was UMBC.
That's correct. In baseball, the phrase daisy cutter is an old slang term referring to what?
What?
In baseball, the phrase daisy cutter is an old slang term referring to what?
I have never heard that in my life. I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is the first time. I don't know. A curveball. I don't know.
The answer is a ground ball. You
I
get
have,
it. You hit
I
it.
have
The
never.
ball cuts the daisies on the
Have you
grass.
ever? Have you heard that before, Ryan? Have you heard that before you took that question?
I personally didn't. I did get it correct just because I took a guess, but
Sure.
true or false? The Grateful Dead paid for the 1992 Summer Olympic uniforms of the Lithuanian basketball team. They were tie-dyed.
I'm gonna say false.
That was true.
Huh? The more you know. Lithuania basketball. Jonas Valanciunas, pretty good Lithuanian basketball player.
Yeah. Indiana University men's basketball coach Bobby Knight threw what item across the court in a 1985 game?
A chair.
Yeah.
It's quite the highlight.
True or false, MLB umpires are required to wear black underwear in case they split their pants.
False.
That was true.
Really? They regulate the underwear that the umpires wear?
Apparently. All right.
Well, you know what? I guess that's a concern. Okay. I could see that.
Well, Matt, this was 100 questions to exercise your team sports knowledge, and you're down to the final two. True or false? Though it is called America's pastime, the game of baseball actually originated in the Dominican Republic.
Are you asking true or false here? I must.
Yep.
I'm going to say false.
That was true.
Wait, what? That's true?
Yep.
Huh.
We
Well,
stole
there you
something
go.
else, if you can believe that. When a football wide receiver does not fully extend their arms to catch a pass so as to avoid being hit by a defender in the process, they are known to have what? I'll give you a
I
hint.
just call it a business decision is what I call it.
They are known to have what kind of arms when they don't fully extend their arms to catch a pass?
I could picture it in my head. You know what? Instead of embarrassing myself, I'm going to yield my final question.
The answer is alligator arms.
Ah,
So I think you probably ended up getting, of those 100, we skipped some just because it would be hard to answer them in a scenario like this. I'd say you probably hit on about, I don't know, 70%, 75%. I think that's a good number.
you know what? I'll take it. Considering I got Mickey Mantle's number wrong, I really bounced back strong towards the end. Forgot what year the WNBA started. Really kind of hit my stride towards the end after that. I got the range right. I always get it mixed up. You know what it is I get it mixed up with them in Major League Soccer because they're sort of the same timeline of 20 or 25. So I think Major League Soccer is the other one that I got it mixed up with in terms of when they started. So
That makes sense. So that, I think, about does it for episode 28. Unless you have anything that pops your tarts this week. I don't think we've done that in a couple of weeks.
what pops my tarts, Ryan, is when winter just... Actually, you know what? No. What pops my tarts, Ryan,
Oh,
is the people that complain about the weather when it's cold out, and they say, oh, I wish it was warm out. I hate the winter. And then it's 95 degrees out because it's the summer, and it's what they asked for, and they say, it's too hot out. I'm sweating. I want it to be cooler. I can't wait for the fall and the winter. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Pick one or the other, or just don't commentate on the weather at all. That's what pops my tarts. I hate when the meteorologists or like, you know, the banter with like the anchors on TV is like, oh, it's going to be a cold one out there. You know, can't wait for those warmer days. And then fast forward 8 months. Oh, I just can't wait for those cooler days. It's so hot in my house. Like, stop. Pick one or the other. That's what pops my tarts.
I have been guilty of that at some points. I've tried working on it.
Well, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking people who like do it consistently, like who like will make you know that they hate one way and they wish they had another one, and then you get there and then they hate that too.
I do respect the people, I will say this, that don't like the winter but love the 90-plus degree days we get in the middle of July. I do respect those people.
I'm one of those people. I would much rather have 95 degrees and humid than 20 degrees and icy.
I think we've discussed this before. If I had to choose, I'd rather it be cold, because if it's cold, you can just keep putting on more layers. Once it gets too hot, in our society, we live in a society where you can't really unrobe when it gets too hot out. You still have to keep on some type of clothes. But when it's cold, you don't have to worry about that. You can just put on hoodie, some jacket, gloves, and you're all good. When it's warm out and you're too hot, you can't do anything. That's how I look at it.
I guess from working at a summer camp for so many years, my body just is conditioned for the hottest of summer days. But listen, I'm okay. Like if someone doesn't like, I'm just having an issue with the people who verbalize it 24/7 and say like, oh, I hate the winter. And I say, oh, okay, well, summer's coming right up. And then the summer comes around and I don't know. We should just appreciate the weather that we have, except for me, who I hate winter this time of year. I only appreciate it during the first snowfall. Now I'm sick of it.
It's weird. You know, on the same podcast about 2 months ago, we heard about how much my co-host loves to shovel snow. It was one of his favorite activities. And now...
Not anymore.
No, that changed real quick. Now, I have something that pops my tarts. And it's... I don't want it to seem like I'm complaining, because I'm not, because I did this to myself. But what pops my tarts is long hair. So... this is the longest I think my hair has ever been. I've gone a long time without a haircut. I just decided last year, in March, I was like, you know what? If I'm living in a global pandemic, now seems like the perfect time to just grow it out. And I did, clearly. It's a real pain when you get out of the shower and you have to dry hair like this. You can't just towel it off and then you're done. You can't. You got to dry it off. Maybe you use a blow dryer. You got to brush it. It's a whole process. I don't know how people do it every day or every other day, however many times you wash your hair a week. It's annoying. And as I said, I'm not complaining. I did it to myself. I know very well I could just get it all cut off and avoid all this. I'm committed. But I do need to say I respect the people that have to deal with this every day, because I definitely couldn't do this year after year. It is annoying.
So is this a contract year for your long hair, or is this a long-term solution? Is this the Deshaun Watson of your hair, Ryan, or is this like your J.J. Watt? Are you going to get rid of it?
At some point, I will get rid of it. I'm not gonna be like PFT commenter and just let it grow forever. At some point, I will cut it. Is it this year? I don't know. Maybe. But I would like to keep it going. The last time I got a haircut, and I can tell you this, was December. I'm just gonna go all the way back here. Was the week of December 8th. 2019. That was it. So it's been over a year now. It's been 14 months since I got a haircut. And I figure at this point, I'll just let it keep going. And there's going to be some point where I'm like, okay, I've experienced this for long enough. It's about time to go back to what I used to have. But I don't know. For now, why not? You know? It's winter too, so it plays, keeps my head warm, so why not?
Yeah, you got to do the before and after Instagram post. Get some mad likes with that. Yeah.
You're right. You're looking out for my brand, which I appreciate. So that was our laid back episode of Best Available Podcast, number 28. It's not the latest one we've ever done. I think one of the earlier ones we did, we started at like 10 or 11. Um, so it wasn't later, the latest one, but it was still just nice laid back. It's almost like I kind of compare it to like if we just came back from like our smooth jazz band session and we just needed to just relax. So that was this. We were just riffing all night. You have anything else you want to tell our lovely listeners before we part for another week?
Not really. Just a lot of exciting hoops going on. The NBA G League's back. Lots of cool prospects. Make sure to check that out. College hoops, NBA hoops, high school hoops. We got a lot of high school hoops articles from our guy Kevin Edmonds up on the website. So hoops all around. And if you're a hockey fan, well, Ryan and I get to watch our teams play on a lake on Sunday. So, yay.
Well, this has been Best Available Podcast, episode 28. We really hope that you've enjoyed listening to us here on whatever platform that you listen to, Spotify, Apple. If you watch us on YouTube, anything really. And we're available on all your favorite streaming platforms. I'd also like to remind you this episode is sponsored by the Best Available Player Patreon that we never talk about. If you'd like to support us monetarily, just go to patreon.com/bestavailableplayer for all the information. We'd really appreciate any contributions and donations to our project. I want to thank you for listening to Best Available Podcast, episode 28. We'll catch you guys again next week. See ya.